in this video, we will be going over loops in the Swift programming language, specifically two main types of loops, a for each loop and a while loop. So let's get started. So first, let's cover the basic syntax of a loop. And in Swift, we do for, and let's create a variable called index, and let's loop through for index and 1 to, let's say, 100. Then we use a curly bracket, and then we do print our index. Let's run our code, save anyway. And nice, so we got all numbers from 1 to 100. What this is basically doing is it's setting index to a value in the range, so 1 to 100, and it's printing that index. So for every, just like it sounds, for every number, it prints that number. Let's go into more in-depth details now. Our first exercise is creating a for in loop that loops the values 1 to 100 and then prints each of the values. So similar to what we did earlier, let's do for index in 1 to 100. So this is essentially a range, and we use 3 dots to show that. There's curly brackets for a for loop, and we print index. Confirm it's working. Good. Now we can also create a for in loop that loops through characters in a string or elements in an array. So in this case, we have to loop through each of the characters in the alphabet string below and print each of the values alongside the index. So in this specific case, we can use the enumerated method. It's fairly simple. So let's first start with our for loop syntax. So for letter and alphabet, let's print letter. Now let's see how it goes. Good, so we're getting the letter, but we also needed the index alongside the letter. And to do that, we can do alphabet dot enumerated. What that does, it gives the letter but also the index, but it returns it as a tuple, as you can see here. So tuple essentially is, think of it like a fixed array with only fixed array, and this time it has two values. So since it has two values, the first one is, let's go back. So the first one is the index. So we can do index, comma, letter. Now let's print the same thing. So let's print index, comma, letter. And great. So now we have exactly as we need with the index and then the letter. Next, we have to create a string dictionary where the keys are the names of states and the values are their capitals. Include at least 3 key value pairs in your collection, then use a for in loop to iterate over the pairs and print out their keys and values in a sentence. So first, let's create our string dictionaries. So var, let's name this state, capitals, and let's set this equal to a state. So we can name this New York, and the capital is Albany. If you're not sure how to create a dictionary, watch my earlier video about Swift collections. So next, let's do California, and we'll set this equal to Sacramento. Next, do Texas, and this will be equal to Austin. Now we have to iterate through using a for in loop. So for, we can say, so we have to iterate over the pairs and print the keys and values. So to do that, we'll also get first a key, and we'll get the value. For key value in state capitals, we'll print, and first let's print the state. So let's use escape sequence, and let's do our key. So that'll give us the state. If you're not sure about strings, there's also a tutorial about specific strings in Swift, and let's say New York is Actually, let's do the value, so that gives us the capital. So, or we could do the key, let's say the capital, so the capital of the state is, now let's do value. Let's see what that gives us. The capital of Texas is Austin, the capital of California. So that's good. And we're printing, then we're using the for loop to print the keys and values in a sentence. Great. Let's continue. So suppose your app contains a list of different movements that can be tracked. You want to display each item in the list to the user. Use a for in loop through movements and movements below and print each movement. So it seems that we have to display each item in the list to the user. So what we can do is do for item and movements, and then we'll just print movements, I believe, out. So we'll print item, and we get each of the items in the list. So I believe this is fairly simple. So we displayed each item in the list for the user, and we used a for in loop to loop through movements. Now suppose your app uses a dictionary to keep track of your average heart rate during each of the movements in movements. The keys correspond to the movements listed above, and values correspond to the average heart rate and your fitness tracker has monitored during a given movement. Loop through movement heart rates below, printing statements telling the user his or her average heart rate during each exercise. This is similar to what we did before. So for, we'll get a key and then a value in movements. Let's print. Let's say your heart rate is, and the heart rate is the value. So escape sequence and value. Your heart rate is a number during during mm, during, I guess, as you as you are as you then we'll say the key, so what their activity was. Let's see how it goes. So your key value per in movements. Okay, so here we get the value as an integer, so we have to convert it as a int. Oh, I see. So we did movements, but it's actually movement heart rate. Let's see if this fixes the error. Great. Let's continue. Now we have to create a while loop that simulates rolling a 6-sided dice repeatedly until 1 is rolled. After each roll, print the value. So we have to use int.random to generate a random number between 1 and 6. So let's first cover how to create a while loop. So let's first create a while loop. So we do while, and it has to be a condition. So the condition is a boolean, so something while true, while false. So we can see while, and then we'll do int. So we can actually say roll, and while roll is, and we have to see until 1 is rolled. So while roll is not equal to 1, so we don't get a 1, so basically until we get a 1, we would have to set this equal to roll, so we generate a new random value. Okay, and then we'll also print the value. So let's print, so let's do, so after each roll, so we'll print roll. Let's see how it goes. So okay, run it again. Okay, so we got lucky, and great. So it's basically rolling some random number of times, and it's updating roll each time it does that, and it's checking if it's not equal to 1. If it's equal to 1, then it doesn't do the while loop, so then it continues on. So next, We might want your fitness tracker to help runners track and improve their cadence. Running cadence is the number of steps a runner takes in a minute. To help with this, you decide to let the user input a cadence, after which your app will play a sound at each interval they use to take another step. For this exercise, you'll simulate a run test for the cadence feature of your app. Use a while loop to print take a step to the console 10 times. This is the console. Once you successfully printed take a step to the console 10 times, add the following code at the end of your while loop. Thread.sleep, okay, and then this will put pause between each iteration of the while loop so that the print statement will actually occur at the proper cadence. Okay, so for this exercise, we'll have to use a while loop. So while and let's see, so we have to do this 10 times. So while test steps is less than 10, we will firstly print them to take a step. Take a step. And then we'll have to use this. So thread sleep timer cadence. So since we can see it's doing it an infinite number of times, we have to add this, and this time it waits. But we also won't need to update test step. So we have to add 1 to test steps. So test steps is plus equal to 1. So now it should only run 10 times. Great. Next, we recreate the above cadence using a repeat while loop. To create a repeat while loop, we have to do repeat. And this is essentially the same thing what we did here, but the repeat is the condition or the action. So we do repeat and then our action, but we have a while at the bottom. So this is our condition. So here we do while, and then test steps is less than 10. So this repeat happens while that happens. So that should do it 10 times, and this should happen 10 times. Great. Here we have to create a for in loop that loops through the alphabet, and essentially it has to print every other letter or just the one with even indexes. To do that, we can do for, and then let's do letter in alphabet. So this is a normal for in loop, and here we have to have an if statement to check if let's actually enumerate this. So we get the index, and here we get the index and the letter. So if the index is multiple of 2, I believe its dot is multiple of 2, then we print, I believe, the letter, and let's also print, I think the letter is enough. So let's see what happens. So we get everything from A, C, E, G. So it looks like it is skipping every letter and till Y. So that's great. And I believe essentially we're just taking in if the number is even, then we're printing it, or else it just continues on. Now we have to create a string dictionary where the keys are names of state and the values of capital. Include at least 3 key value pairs, one with them being your home state. Now loop through this dictionary again, printing out the keys and values in a sentence. But add an if statement that will check if the current iteration is your home state. If it is, print I found my home, and breaks out of the loop. So we can essentially use the same one over here, but we'll have to make some modifications. So let's do the 3 states, and then now let's say, for example, New York is our home state. We'll add an if statement, so we'll loop the dictionary, printing out the keys and values in a sentence, but add an if statement will check if the current iteration is your home state. If it is, print I found my home, and break out of the loop. So let's actually do California, so we can get the first one and then break, so it doesn't go to Texas. Break is essentially a way to break out an inner loop, or in a loop of conditions, since we're having another inner if condition. So if the key is equal to California. And we can print, I found my home. And then we will break. So it does the first two, and then it breaks. That's great, let's continue. Here, we have to decide if we want our users to be able to put in a heart energy range they would like to hit. And then we want the app to suggest movements where historically the user reached that heart range. The dictionary movement heart rates below contains keys corresponding to the movements the heart has tracked, and values corresponding to the average heart rate of the user that your fitness tracker has monitored historically during the given movement. So we'll loop through movement heart rates below, and if the heart rate doesn't fall between lower and higher average heart rate, continue to the next movement and heart rate. Otherwise, print, you could go and then insert movement here. So let's essentially do a for key value. So we get the movement and the heart rate. In the dictionary movement heart rates, we will print curly brackets. So we have to check for conditions. So if the value is greater than low heart rate and it is value is less than the higher heart rate, we will print. And then this print statement they provided, the string. So we will print, you could go here and let's make this a escape escape variable. So we'll print the activity, which is the key. And let's see if it works. So you can go skiing, or you can go running and skiing. So now let's see if low heart rate, so walking is too low, running is good, swimming is too high, cycling is too high, skiing is good, and climbing is too high. So great, we completed this exercise. See you in the next one.